New alarm bells ringing tonight on the coronavirus outbreak in this country.
Doctors say the virus is spread through droplets when someone coughs or sneezes.
And I think the business community, it's in their interest that people actually stay home and stop the spread.
For a business that can allow more employees to telecommute, we want you to do that.
Hi, friends. I'm Andy Paul, host of the Sales Enablement Podcast, and I want to encourage you to listen to my brand new special 6-part podcast miniseries titled Selling with Purpose. The team behind Sales Enablement Podcast and I put together this incredible series of inspiring conversations exploring what it means to sell with a mission greater than just hitting your numbers in this era of COVID-19 and beyond. So tune in to hear from world-class enterprise sales leaders and learn how their 6 companies will close $50 billion selling remotely. See how they've supported essential workers with the products and services they need to stay safe and thrive during this time of crisis. Subscribe to Selling with a Purpose now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Guided selling from RingDNA makes your entire sales team more effective by revealing exactly what reps should do and when to do it. Guided selling works by transforming sales data into a curated list of prioritized sales actions. So when reps start their day, they'll never again wonder which prospects and accounts or hot inbound leads to reach out to next. Guided selling even shifts reps' priority in response to real-time buying signals. Finally, even new reps can sell like seasoned ones. Let RingDNA be your guide to success. Learn more at ringdna.com/guided selling. That's ringdna.com/guided selling. It's time to accelerate. Hey friends, this is Andy. Welcome to episode 706 of Accelerate, the sales podcast of record. Well, I have another excellent episode lined up for you today. Joining me as my guest is Ethan Beute. Ethan is Vice President of Marketing at BombBomb and co-author of the new book titled Rehumanize Your Business, How Personal Videos Accelerate Sales and Improve Customer Experience. Now, today we're going to get into what Ethan sees as a movement that's all about being human. And certainly if you've listened to the show at all or follow me, you know that's something I'm a big advocate of. And we're going to talk about the importance of being ourselves and treating others as humans, not as objects, not purely as prospects that we need something from. And we're going to talk about the impacts, sort of the dehumanizing impacts of sort of our faceless digital communication in the world today, and about how using video can make doing your job in sales more human for you, as well as for the customer, and show the customer what it's like to work with you, to experience a little bit what it's like to work with your service and your company. And Ethan's going to get into why he believes that rehumanizing your business is really about a return to the old ways of doing business. And we'll dig into all that. Now, before we get to the interview, let me tell you about your buyers, because study after study finds that B2B buyers want more acumen from sellers. And there's several aspects to what comprise acumen, but one of them is your ability to communicate in a human, relevant, and compelling manner, just like we're talking about in the interview today. Effective communications is what leads to the relationships that lead to opportunities that in turn lead to orders. So if you want to learn how to communicate with your prospects, to build the relationships and trust that inspires them to want to do business with you, then you definitely need to check out the Foundations for Sales Growth. This is one of the programs I've created for members of the Sales House, my sales growth engine for B2B sellers. Now, the Sales House contains courses, live coaching, a highly engaged community sharing advice, and it's all yours once you become a member. So come become the best version of you at the Sales House. Visit thesaleshouse.com. That is thesaleshouse.com, or go to thesaleshouse.com/join. All right, let's jump into it with my guest today, Ethan Beute. Ethan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invite.
Well, hey, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. As someone who's starting to use your product more and more these days, I think it's we're going to dig into why personal videos are such a good idea. But I'm sort of fascinated. So without sort of preempting what we're going to talk about later, is so how'd the idea come about for BombBomb?
The original founder's story, Connor McCluskey and Darren Dawson, longtime friends, kind of entrepreneurial spirits for a long time, and they had started a separate business together. When I ran into them and when they founded BombBomb, Connor was selling outdoor. He was selling billboards for Lamar, and he had this like a lot of sales reps. He inherited some kind of a list, served it very, very well, grew it. And got to a point where he couldn't stay in front of people as often as he wanted to. And so he had this idea of like sending himself any videos. This is like early 2006. And so he was looking for a solution for this problem, and he didn't really find one that he liked. And so, he put together kind of a hacky scenario where he got someone to host the email HTML in one place, host the video somewhere else, and put it together, host the list, and sent it out to a list of just a couple hundred people, and had just this amazing response. But the response wasn't, tell me more about this, about yourself and the billboard opportunities I have. It was like, how did you do this? And so he and Darren both tried to get other people to build the software, but through some fits and starts, and then a really fortuitous conversation with a mentor of theirs who's just, you guys just need to do this yourself. And so the really fun thing about it is, the odds of us being where we are here in 2019 are so long from the perspective of 2006.
Sure.
Especially, we're not venture backed. We're all bootstrapped. It's all friends and family money and growing on our own revenue. And so that adds some additional layers of unlikeliness to reach where we've arrived. But the really fun thing for me, and I've been involved with them, I was involved part-time for a couple years before joining full-time. So I've been with them for about a decade now. The really cool thing about that whole process is that the original vision of I want to be face-to-face with my customers and my future customers more often. I want to do it at scale, and video is a good way to do it. Now, he had the advantage, unlike a lot of folks that are listening right now, he had the advantage of doing work within the region. No one he was selling to was more than an hour or an hour and a half away by car. So he could visit them. But that's the scale part of it, is he wanted to create that personal experience across time and distance so he could do it more often. So contract renewal alerts, lunch appointments, follow-ups after appointments with a prospect. Hey, really enjoyed the time together. Thank you so much. I noticed that you were really excited about Bing, 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 but you also had that concern about the other thing. I just want to remind you, blah, blah, blah. Here's the next step, right? And so all these little touches that he could do in a more personal way. And so the fun thing is that, here we are more than a dozen years later, and the original vision is come to life and being practiced by tens of thousands of people in an even better way than we imagined initially, because at the time it wasn't the one-to-one engine that it is now.
Right. Well, you talk about a lot of these issues about how to use video and use video effectively, because we should. I mean, given that we have all this bandwidth out there and we have the applications, and given the fact that I think more people would be better off, instead of trying to craft an email, just as just getting on the camera and speaking authentically about to the prospect that they're talking with. That it seems like it makes such sense, right? And yet, I'm sort of always surprised at people that seem so reluctant to adopt it. One is huge fear of being on camera, still for a lot of people, which is crazy sort of these days, I think. But also this feeling that with sort of the inverse, where they think that they have to be more scripted when they're talking like this or talking to the camera to deliver an email, as opposed to when they sit down and write an email, which for me, my wife gives me a hard time. I labor over emails forever, but get me on camera and I blah, 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 chat pretty easily.
Yeah, so you touched on a number of really important things there. One of them is this idea of each salesperson being his or her own best sales asset, essentially. You are more than the words you type into the computer, or worse, words that are written for you, and it's just your name and email signature slapped on it. And you probably don't even know the contents of that email until you get a reply that questions the content of the email. You're like, maybe I better read this email I've been sending to hundreds of people. And so it is. It's a much more natural, much more human way to communicate. We've been doing it for millennia, for far longer. I mean, as a species, we've only been broadly literate for about 500 years or so. And so this idea of looking each other in the eye, in the face, smiling, emoting, shrugging our shoulders, putting on sad faces or concerned faces, and all these things we do automatically. We write them to our faces automatically, and we read them from other faces, other people's faces automatically. It's just so natural and fundamentally human. Whereas, to your point, we labor over our writing. We had a research project in our community about 3 or 4 years ago. I wrote a blog post and cited this gentleman who was working on his doctorate at Harvard Business School in organizational communication, organizational psychology. And he had done a ton of research on traditional email. And one of his themes is we have a lot of anxiety, and we overcraft our emails typically, and we overestimate our ability to communicate clearly in our typed out emails. And so, when you're talking about your wife kind of teasing you a little bit, and the reason you labor over this is like you have this opportunity to like back. I'm going to get this just right. I'm going to get it perfect, whatever. Now, let's transition that to video. One of the reasons we wrote this book, Rehumanize Your Business, is to just capture all the things we've learned and taught by having great relationships with our customers and being practitioners ourselves, to really break all this stuff down, because you really hit a big one, which is I'm really uncomfortable. I don't like how I look or sound. I don't know what to say. All these kind of natural human things where if you got someone on the phone, you knew why you called, you know what you want to communicate, you know what the call to action is. You don't worry about it. You don't think twice about it. You do it automatically. But somehow when we hit record on the video, we get all twisted up and we get in our own head and we start judging our appearance and all these things. But for those of you who are selling in environments where you do take face-to-face appointments, where you're not responsible for a 6-state area and you only see your clients maybe once every couple of years or something, if you're one of these people who sells locally, you would not think twice about having a sales conversation in the produce section of your grocery store should that happen to arise. You wouldn't think twice if someone said, hey, I've been thinking about it a lot. Can you meet today at 2:00 at Starbucks? You wouldn't think twice. I mean, you might check yourself in the mirror before you headed out for the appointment, but you wouldn't dwell on the words you're saying and the pace that you're saying it at and what you look like and all these other things you get wrapped up in when you can see and hear yourself on video. And so the natural tendency for someone who is thinking about going down this road and they try it out a little bit is to really be in their own head. But to your point again, you are your own best sales asset. You communicate a lot more effectively eye to eye, face to face. You're probably not a very good writer. Most of us are not. And you're very natural. One of the reasons you're in the role you're in is you have ideally some kind of a natural ability to connect with people. And you don't have to be over the top. I see people successfully sell with video by being who they are, not necessarily by being some dynamic figure or being some scripted, polished person. In fact, that is a detriment. We hear that all the time too.
Well, but that plays out in normal email communication as well. So we're going to start heading on the track and talk about that. So as you mentioned, your book, Rehumanize Your Business, How Personal Videos Accelerate Sales and Improve Customer Experiences. So, excuse me, let's talk about this notion of rehumanizing. So what did you mean about that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. There's a lot of talk in general, human to human, humanize, be more human. Like, I really like that this is a conversation in the general business culture now. I think the idea that someone like Brene Brown has a mainstream business book, I think is a positive thing. I think this movement toward being more naturally ourselves and treating other people as human beings as opposed to prospects per se or numbers or quotas or whatever. So there's been a lot of talk about being more human and humanizing things, I feel like, for about 5 or 6 or 7 years. The reason we went with rehumanize as the preferred language is this is just a return to the way business was always done. And you can look at this in a variety of ways. For example, in the beginning of Gary Vaynerchuk's Thank You Economy, he harkens back to the baker and the candlestick maker and whoever in like these small villages just a few hundred years ago. And if you did wrong by somebody, word would spread. His argument, of course, is around this idea of reviews and online voices.
Word of mouth, right?
Things. But I go to that just to say this is simply a return to the way that we've always been most effective. It's only been over the past 20 years or so that we've increasingly restricted ourselves to faceless digital communication. And we do it for a variety of reasons. I mean, email is a huge benefit. Text messaging is a huge benefit. Social media is a huge benefit. But one of the downsides to all of them is that we increasingly rely on the same black text on the same white screen that doesn't build rapport, doesn't differentiate us from anyone else, and typically doesn't communicate nearly as well as if we just got eye to eye, face to face. So our whole premise is that if you find some spots to reinsert yourself, to put the messenger back into the message, that you will rehumanize the process of what it's like to A, do your job, and then B, on the recipient side, what it's like to work with you and your product or your service or your company and all the things that you represent. It's a rehumanizing of a process where we've been dehumanized. There's a little research in the book. We don't need to talk about it now, but there's some dehumanizing effects of faceless digital communication.
Sure.
From a human psychology and scientific standpoint. And so we see this as a rehumanization of the sales process and the customer experience.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that it sort of goes, I look at it as a tool that can certainly facilitate that, right? I mean, the fact is, if you want to make things more humanized or more human, it still starts with the person. The person has to be more human. I mean, so the tool that you're talking about, I think is a great tool to say, look, if you're prepared to be more human, if you're prepared to be focused, you're prepared to be present, you're prepared to be curious, you're prepared to ask great questions, then yeah, these are tools that are extremely useful and can help facilitate and accelerate, to your point, building these relationships. But the problem I think we have, which is, sort of swept into multiple generations, not just the younger generations, as most people think, is that people become so fixated on the impersonal, the text, the email, but also on their screens to a degree that we have to have this moment of awareness that's, I think, to your point, is beginning to happen. And you see people writing about it. You see people like Rohit Bhargava write about the human mode as one of the impressive new trends that are coming out. You've seen companies getting away from phone trees and going to human operators more. You're getting a sense that, this is sort of a swing of the pendulum a little bit to say, there's room for the person in amongst the technology.
Yeah, that's another tension that we can talk about too. And I'd be curious to know your thoughts and experience on it because you talk to so many smart people. We get a little bit into that as well. And, I think it's the fourth chapter where we're helping you self-identify to decide whether or not this is the right approach for you. And I think in most cases it is. But, one of them is this, we do need technology. We do need machine. We do need automation, AI, all of these. We need a lot of automated touches in order to scale our businesses. It's one of the advantages that technology has allowed us. But there are moments in all of these processes to be truly personal. And so it's something I'm trying to explore more often is when can we personalize? And that is, hey, Andy, you've watched the first 4 seasons of Parks and Rec on Netflix. I don't know if you have, but
no.
But Amazon would know.
Not on Netflix, but
okay. Hey, the 5th season is available. We thought you would want to know that, right? So it's super relevant. It's based on your real behavior. It reads like it's just for you. In fact, it is just for you. It's delivered exactly at the right time. This thing just released. And that's awesome. You don't need a phone call from someone at Amazon Prime or Netflix to let you know that the new season of that show is available. So we do need that, but there are also times for the truly personal. And so it's a line that I draw out when I'm thinking and talking and conversing is this personalized versus personal. And so, the machine allows us to do both of them better. It will do the personalized for us if we set it up properly and we have good data hygiene. But it can also trigger us to be more personal. I had a conversation with Joseph Jaffe, who's written a number of great books, including Flip the Funnel and Life After the 30-Second Spot, and a new one called Built to Suck. And he was telling me the story of checking in at, I forget whether it was the Four Seasons or another high-end chain, but they greeted him and his daughter, and they knew, because it was part of his original reservation, that that they were going on college campus tours, right? She's of age, considering colleges. And so they greeted him. This must be your daughter. You must be so proud that you're going to check out this guy. Like, that was made possible through collecting data at the right time and serving it up to a human being to create this real human to human moment that meant a lot to him. And so the machine can serve both personal and personalized, but we need to pick those spots, because when we fail to realize that we're missing opportunities to be truly personal, I think it has real consequences. It's also not as fun.
Yeah. Well, I like to separate them by the categories of saying personalize versus humanize. And because I think that, unfortunately, the personalization has sort of been hijacked by marketing automation and other segments where they talk about the idea of mass personalization at scale, which to me is an oxymoron. But if you're talking about personalization in the sense that most of us would think about it, I mean, the word, like I said, has been hijacked to mean something completely different. So I think we really are talking about how do we humanize the communications in a way that bring the humanity back into it. But as I said before, I think more and more people are craving that. So here's this opening, if you're in sales, is a moment where I think that it's really at the beginning of a moment, I believe, is where we're beginning to understand really the role of the human going forward in a process that is more surrounded by technology than in automation than it ever will be, right? I mean, it's going to that trend's going to continue. So really, how do you carve a rollout for the person in that whole thing? And I think that's it's something you touch on in your book, and it's something that will continue to evolve as time evolves. But the sum of all of our technologies we use really has, to some degree, made selling more difficult. And
there's definitely a lot more noise, right? That's the issue.
And that's really one of the primary difficulties. And the noise exists on several levels. One is, technology has lowered the barrier to entry for companies in all sorts of different industries, right? The digital technology. I mean, heck, you guys started, you may have been one of the first, and before you know it, there's a half a dozen or a dozen companies that suddenly have been able to do what you're doing, and it's true, it replicated market to market. So buyers are being inundated just with more competitors and more choice, but then you multiply that by all those competitors now have these tools that enable them to reach out on a mass basis, marketing automation and so forth. So suddenly, not only the number of competitors go up, but the amount of messaging they're getting from all the competitors has gone up. And I think it is harder to break through the noise.
Yeah, and so we're in this window now where reaching out in a truly personal way, where you let someone know in the subject line, we do an animated preview automatically for every video, but in the thumbnail or the animated preview, and with some of the supporting text around it, that this isn't some canned piece and that it's truly personal. It has specific, relevant, useful information or a unique opportunity or a curiosity factor or whatever, really does help break through there. Yeah.
Well, just so people understand, because we haven't addressed it specifically. If you're not familiar with BombBomb, it's an application enabled to be able to send videos through your email, sort of a one-to-one basis, or you could do it on a campaign basis as well. But what you were referring to is what I like to call sort of the proof of life technique, which is in your thumbnail you hand up something or show something in the camera that could be today's headline off of a newspaper. We're still reading newspapers, but could just be a handwritten sign, as you did when you sent one to me recently. It's "Hey Andy," just so you knew it was personalized. I think it's a great technique. It's one way to cut through.
It is, and it's two things there. One, we have this desire and really a need, a financial need, but also just a basic human desire to be seen and heard and understood as an individual human being, as does the recipient. So when you can show, another technique here for people that might think that's interesting and want to take another note, we have a screen recorder as well. And so what some people are doing to create that same dynamic is starting where they're the little talking head bubble in the corner. You can move it around anywhere you want with our software, but they're starting on someone's homepage, or they're starting on their LinkedIn profile, or they're starting on a blog post about a podcast that the person they're trying to communicate with guested on. And it just shows this like immediately before I can hit the delete button, I already know, oh my gosh, that's just for me. And so there's there's Cialdini's principles of persuasion or whatever. You can push a couple buttons really, really quickly. But the key to being seen and heard and understood is letting people know that they have been seen and understood, or you seek to understand. And so some of these basic techniques can open up that opportunity more effectively than some of the stuff we've already been talking about.
So, and that brings up a question I had. I was going to ask you specifically about BombBomb, but is so when you are using email on sort of more of a campaign basis, where you do have one email that perhaps you might be sending to multiple people. So what are your techniques in that case then to sort of get your message through?
Yeah. So who are these people? It's great because this exercise requires you. This is interesting. This is I promise I'll get to the answer in just a moment. People will often wonder, why didn't they play my video? Or why didn't they open my email? Or why did they open my email but not play my video or whatever? And it's just this like, why not, why not, why not, why not? When you start your communication to one person or to a list of people with the why would someone, why should someone, when you start there, instead of doing whatever comes natural, doing it on first pass, expecting that someone should just pay attention to you because you managed to get in their inbox or get in their face or whatever, when you begin from the premise of why would somebody participate, you're in a better position. And so where I'll go with that now to answer your question directly is, who are these people? Why are they getting this email? What is the opportunity you're presenting? And how can someone take you up on it? And when you're clear on those things, you can speak to them in a way where you don't have, some people prefer to pretend like it's just for them. And instead of saying, hey, Andy, they just say, oh, hey, I hope you're having a great Wednesday, blah, 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 blah. And enough of the context of, segmenting the list and being really intentional about who's getting this message and who isn't, combined with the subject line and the supporting text around it that drives the video play, and some of the text drives the call to action in the email, whether it's click the link to schedule on my calendar or click the link to RSVP through Eventbrite, or whether it's, click the link to go check out this podcast, or whatever the case may be. When you can tie that stuff together in a way that is organized around why the person should or would from the get-go, you're in a position to win. And so you obviously can't write an individual's name on like a whiteboard or a sticky note. You can't hover over one person's LinkedIn profile if it's an email to 127 people. Right. But there's something about those 127 people, the reason you selected them to receive this message, the opportunity that you're presenting them, and the reason that they would want to take you up on it, that would allow you to do something approximately personal. So, for example, I have a guy, he's a real estate agent, and he works in a kind of a lakes community out in eastern Michigan, north of Detroit, south of Flint. And he just cycles through all the different price point changes in his community. And he starts with this is your area market update, right? And so it's not for Bob and Tina, but when he sees that Bob and Tina opened that email and played his video, then he follows up one-to-one and says, hey, Bob and Tina, how are you doing? Gosh, it's been since last summer at the barbecue since I've seen you. Hope you're doing really well. You may have noticed in that video that homes on your lake are up 18% year to year. Now, I know Jenny's still in high school. Congratulations on her making varsity volleyball team. But if you've had any thoughts at all, this might be an interesting time to reevaluate your housing situation, right? So anyway, so that's the long way around. Who are these people? Why are they in one group together? And why do you target them as as being right for this opportunity? And then how specific can you be in the subject line, the email body, and in the preview of your video to communicate that?
Yeah, and I think it's useful to separate into a couple different categories is uses, let's say, use cases. One is, sure, we're going to have our SDRs, we're going to have our outbound teams that are using video, just as you described, on more of a campaign basis. That's fantastic. But I really feel the bigger power is really more in, we'll call middle of funnel activities, if you will, where you're actually establishing that one-on-one relationship with one and or more stakeholders in a decision. And I think this is what really becomes important too, as you get multiple stakeholders in a decision, this ability to communicate more fluently, more fluidly through video than you might through writing. I think from a persuasion, from an influence standpoint, it becomes way more powerful.
Completely. I mean, again, when we say you are your own best sales asset, it's not to pump up you and your ego. It's to say you are true. Yeah. It's to say that you are going to do a much better job of having someone see you, hear you, feel you, and understand you when you are more fully yourself than the words you type on the screen ever could be. And so it's just a more complete piece of communication, period, on a human-to-human basis, and therefore it is just inherently more persuasive. Now, the one thing I always caution people on is if you are not sincere, if you don't actually believe in your product or service, if you are not coming from a place of value and you are not actually trying to, if you are purely and exclusively transaction-oriented, video might not be for you, because the same way that sincerity and interest provoke response and provoke knowing, liking, and trusting, people can, we can spell insincerity the same way. So if you're, you have to kind of mean it if you're going to use video.
Well, yeah, absolutely. You sort of have to mean it no matter what you do. But yeah, you can certainly sniff it out more quickly if you're actually looking at a person and I think hearing them than you can if they can cloak it in email. Eventually, you're going to be found out. So I guess maybe
and our brains do that automatically. I mean, It's looking for the discontinuity between the body language and the words and the tone, right? Like we're constantly looking for integrity, essentially, consistency in the way that the message is being communicated. Mm-hmm. And we do it all automatically, subconsciously. And again, that's my caution for people who are grossly insincere about what they're doing.
Such a good description. Hopefully you haven't hired people listening to the show. You haven't hired anybody that's grossly insincere, or you yourself are not, which I suspect.
It would have been sniffed out in the interview.
Yeah, right. And I suspect my listeners certainly are not insincere about sales. Otherwise, they wouldn't be spending their time listening to this. But I think one of the things that can sort of trip people up that may come across as being insincere when it's really not intended, and it's to a point you made earlier, is that when you're using video, I believe you have to be much more clear about what the call to action is. And because it gets more personal when they're seeing you deliver this as opposed to reading a piece of email. It's still some of their time, but there's just this different level, I believe. And so it gives you an opportunity, which is a huge opportunity for you. But I think the reason a lot of people stray away from sometimes doing interactive video calls or doing the video emails as we've been discussing is they just don't know what they should be saying at that point in time. And that's a bigger sales issue. But yeah, you don't want to take people's time, consume some of people's time, and I think especially so on video, if you're really uncertain about what it is, the message you're trying to get across.
Yeah, that's perfectly true. I was just in a conversation on LinkedIn earlier today about when to re-record your videos and when just to let them fly. And as a kind of reading what people were offering there in the video that the gentleman explained his ideas in, the one time that I will tend to re-record a video is if I feel like I can communicate the same message in 2/3 or even half the amount of time. If I record a video and I realize, gosh, you know what? That went 2 minutes and 10 seconds. I really think I could do this in a minute. And so it is true. You do need to be respectful of people's time. I think another thing people tend to want to do in an email and in a video in a lot of communication is really bury the call to action. They feel like they need to, walk people in the front door and show them all around and blah, 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 before we ever get to the call to action. And so the video, can sincerely help drive the call to action. It eliminates a bunch of words out of the email. So you generally, I recommend, depending on the nature of what you're doing, but a high level recommendation. There's no one size fits all for a video in an email. But, 1 or 2 lines of text to drive the video play. The video brings it to life, provides a little trust and rapport, gives you a little context, maybe gives you the opportunity to demonstrate that you've actually researched this person or their company or whatever. Just 1 or 2 little nuggets there that let them know, oh my gosh. And I can tell you a story on that in a minute, but I won't sideline myself right now. And then 1 or 2 lines to drive the call to action. And so it should, again, all be together. Why would somebody participate in this? Why are you getting this? What is the opportunity? And how do I take you up on the opportunity? These things all work together. Subject line, opening line, short video. The one place where you can get away with a longer video, by the way. So when I say short, I mean ideally a minute or less. So what we do at BombBomb is not only we turn the first 3 seconds of your video into an animated preview, but we also show play 37-second video or play 12-second video or play 58-second video. And then we go to 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, 4 minute. And so if you can keep it under 1 minute, that adds another layer of clarity for the person that provokes a video play and that I know what I'm signing on for, right? Like, oh, it's a 47-second video. I got time for that because it's not a 4-paragraph email. And you can communicate a lot more in 47 seconds than you can in, 2 or 3 or 4 paragraphs. Just through, again, the energy, the enthusiasm, the sincerity, the quickly demonstrating that you've done some research on them and their company.
Well, which is really a key point is so the average person speaks about 150 words a minute, which is about half a page. So you need to keep that in mind as you compose not a script, but bullet points you want to get across. Doesn't hurt to practice because I agree with you 100%. Keeping a minute or under. Really preferable because in a minute, someone may be able to read 300 words.
Yep, and I do have one exception to that. If you
go ahead.
Response to an inquiry, right? And so, ideally, if you're engaged with someone in the great big mid funnel that you referred to earlier, ideally you're going to be connected enough and they're curious enough and engaged enough that they're going to maybe come back as they've said, I'll follow up with you next week on this. And they're just chatting with somebody at the office and a couple more questions come up and they type this reply back. And it probably doesn't just represent their own inquiry often. It represents some other thinking that they've either developed themselves or gotten from a supervisor or from another decision maker in the process, or someone that's going to be implementing whatever your product or service you might be representing. And so in these scenarios, this is another chance to get in front of more decision makers. So not only if someone asks you a question about a complicated product or service, and by complicated, I don't mean like insanely complicated. I just mean
some level
it's
of
not
complexity.
something I can read 2 reviews on Amazon and say, yes, I'll buy this for that price.
Right. Yeah.
This ability to just click record and answer the question as clearly and as effectively and succinctly as you can. But if you go 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, if that's what the message really requires, especially if it has tailored elements for that person and the things that you've learned about them and evokes or conjures information that you've brought up in other exchanges. Really cool thing about videos, it allows you to present the information, present yourself, and present the opportunity to other people in the organization without it having to A, get held up at a gatekeeper, or B, be communicated by someone else who doesn't know you and your product or your service nearly as well as you do. And so it's an easy thing to forward. And so I've seen this happen a number of times in a variety of roles and industries where they send the video, it gets open. I get this reply all the time. I've sent literally millions of emails over the 10 years I've been with the company. And so a lot of people have my email. So I'll get random questions all the time. I get this one. How come my email got opened 14 times and the video got played 8 times, even though I sent it to one person? And so you get into the scenario that they're in and you realize that it's a slightly complex sale, that there are multiple decision makers, and it's just an easy thing to forward. And so it gives you the chance, again, you're your own best sales asset. This gives you the chance to pitch the opportunity or answer the question in front of multiple people who may not ever be in your inbox or may never even be on a conference call or a Zoom call or whatever the case may be throughout the buying cycle. So if someone is asking you a specific question, you are afforded the opportunity. You need to be succinct, but to take a little bit more play there as opposed to, earlier in the relationship. Definitely keep it under a minute if you can.
Okay, so we're getting near the end of the time here. I have a final test for you.
Okay, I'm up for it, I think.
All right. You told me that there are 10 top occasions where video is superior to a text-based email. So I'll give you 30 seconds. Name all 10.
Oh man, that's a good one. I have the book next to me, but I'm not going to open it. One is this kind of like prospecting your first touch.
Right.
Another one is a process update when there's something in flight and you just need to stay in front of people in the absence of information. Never mind, I don't need to explain them all.
Yeah, got that one.
Holidays and other special occasions, just, purchase anniversaries or customer anniversaries or birthdays or whatever.
Right.
And of course you can use social media to get those. Thank you is the single best and easiest and most valuable one to do. Thanking people for a variety of opportunities. Bad news and apologies. Again, because the tone comes through, you can manage the situation so much more effectively when you can just really emote with someone or to someone.
Vulnerability, very important.
Yep. Invitations. Again, you use the who, what, when, where, why, and the call to action to get people to RSVP or whatever, client appreciation party, webinar, whatever the case may be. And you use the video to really drive the value and create some energy around it.
Right.
Great to meet you. Those following up after a networking event or a chance, you're at lunch with a colleague or a friend, and one of their friends comes by. Great way to follow up with them. Provide your contact information, remind them, and let them know that you enjoyed whatever, even if it's a 30-second exchange, that it left an impression on you that makes people feel really, really good and allows you to have a continued conversation.
Are you counting?
I am. I'm at 7. I'm at 7.
I think 7's good. We'll let you go at 7.
Gosh, that's so terrible. Now I got to know. I'm going to look at this while you do whatever you need to do to wrap up.
Yeah, I'm just laughing because it's one of these things as I knew after I wrote my first book and I would do interviews and people would ask me about things in the book. I would have, once you hand that manuscript over to the publisher, it's like 2/3 of it sort of escapes your brain because you've just been so focused on it, and then you move on to something else. So I didn't mean to trap you with the...
No, it's fun. That was a fun game. One of them, internal communication, is one that I missed.
A good one.
We're always talking about engaging our prospects and nurturing them and providing value and all these things and ultimately driving to the close. Internal communication, great for recruiting. If you can identify a salesperson in another organization that's come onto your radar for some particular success, and you get in front of that person, you just let them know, I've been keeping an eye on you, really proud of the work that you're doing. What a great accomplishment. This is the kind of feedback that a lot of people aren't getting internally. So if you can show that you actually care, checking in, gosh, it's been a while. How you doing? What's going on? That might be a 6-month check-in, right? So you sign a contract with someone, implementation takes 6 weeks. So now they maybe haven't had any direct communication for a couple months now. A 6 month, hey, how's it going? Gosh, it's been 6 months by now. Maybe you should have blah, 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 blah. Hey, if you have any questions, let me know, or I'd be happy to get your account rep engaged.
All right, number 10. Coming up. You have one more.
Great to meet you, project or process, cold prospecting, first introduction, nurturing responsive and unresponsive leads.
Nurturing. Good one.
Yeah. Engaging people, following up where you at. Someone kind of, they return the initial phone call or they reply to the initial email. You maybe had a brief phone call or something, but then they kind of go cold on you. Great way to re-engage them. And for those unresponsive leads who you're sending these emails to, and maybe you're getting alerts that the system's opening them, this would give you a chance to directly engage them.
Yeah, and I think on that last one too, if you're doing a nurturing thing, is one thing I'm a huge believer in, is that maybe your couple lines of text, you tease, hey, there's something in the video that you need to hear.
100%.
So hey, there's 2 points I want to bring up in the video, and that way you get them to open it. So,
yep.
All right, Ethan, good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, that was fun. I really appreciate it. I really like the way you run your show.
Thank you.
Really good give and take, and it's an honor to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here, and we'll look forward to doing it again. So tell folks how they can find out more about BombBomb, about your book, and how to connect with you personally.
Cool. Again, my name is Ethan Beute. Last name is Beute, and I'm on every social network by my first and last name. And I welcome introductions, but where you can, include a note so you don't look like a stranger. And we are BombBomb as a company. It's just the word bomb twice, BOMB, BOMB. And you can find us at BombBomb.com and on all the social networks as BombBomb. And the book is called Rehumanize Your Business. And thank you for asking. If you go to BombBomb.com/book, just BombBomb.com/book, you can see who it's for, what it's about. We kind of break down some of the material you're going to get there, as a lot of authors do. We rounded up some people we like and respect to read advanced copies and say nice things about it, so you can review those as well. And you can just get a sense of, is this something for me? And at the moment, I don't know when you are listening to this, person who is listening, but at the moment, Amazon's got it 34% off, which is just insane.
All right. Well, hopefully that's not coming out of your commission. So your royalty,
this is about, honestly, this is about getting the word out. Like, this is a better way to work. It's a more fun way to work, and it produces better results. Like, I want more people to do this, period. And there are a number of services that are doing some variation of what we do. And this is going to be a value to you, whether or not you use our service or another one. I'm just convinced that when we all take a more personal and human approach to the work that we do, we're going to be more satisfied, and we're also going to be more effective.
Absolutely. Agree 100%. That's the whole focus of what we're doing in the Sales House. So, Ethan, we'll talk to you shortly.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, friends, that was Accelerate for this week. First of all, as always, I want to thank you for joining me. And I want to thank my guest, Ethan Beute. Join me again next week, as my guest will be Amelia Danzica. Amelia is a partner for customer success and account management at Winning by Design. And we're going to talk about customer success and how CS has become a driving force in revenue growth, certainly in the SaaS industry, and how this model will soon become applicable in many other businesses as well. So be sure to join us then. And before you go, don't forget to check out the Sales House. It's your all-in-one sales growth engine for B2B sellers just like you. Visit saleshouse.com and look forward to seeing you there. So thanks again for joining me. Until next week, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. RingDNA is the leading sales enablement platform that uses AI to help scale business growth. Trusted by the top companies across the globe, RingDNA offers a suite of powerful tools for every sales role. The RingDNA Dialer radically improves sales productivity and call connection rates, while guided selling helps reps know exactly what to do and when to do it. Conversation AI uses artificial intelligence to surface the most impactful coaching opportunities in real time. So, no matter where your team is working from, the RingDNA platform can help them exponentially increase call connections, opportunities, and revenue. Learn more at ringdna.com/platform. That's ringdna.com/platform.